some major breaking news has come out over the course of this past week, and it has been that Ford's team principal Ewan Wright had been arrested after a brawl at a party. Now, what we can understand from this is that Ewan Wright had organised a big celebratory party for Ford, officially announcing that they were going to be returning into Formula 1 and to celebrate Ford as a team in general. They've been doing it every year since they came back into the sport, and they invited many people to come along, including the likes of Reese, Sergio Perez, Tom, Sam and Lewis Hamilton were some of the drivers that showed up for this event. Ewan is going to be allowed to participate in this race weekend as team principal despite his arrest, as they will continue to look into this much further. Now, in terms of the other members that were there, well, we went through and named them all. It was obviously both the Ford drivers, as they were there anyway, and then anyone else was open to come along and celebrate, and the likes of, as we said before, Reese, Sam, Tom, Perez and Hamilton all decided to turn up and celebrate with Ford being in Formula 1, as they have done. Now, the crucial thing that we don't know about this is we don't know why he was arrested. Well, we know he was arrested for a brawl, but we don't know how that brawl came about, what happened before, what happened after. We need to know more before we're able to bring any more to us. And unfortunately, as this is obviously a case that the police are dealing with, I highly doubt we're going to be able to get every single ounce of information straight away. It's going to take some time to investigate this matter, and will Ford's team principal Ewan Wright remain Ford's team principal after this? That's a very bold thing to ask about, and a very bold thing from Ford in general to even let their team principal Ewan Wright remain as team principal for this race weekend despite the arrest for a brawl. But I'm guessing Ford are probably trying to wait and see if they can get any more information about what happened before they take any further action. It's a big story though, and it's something that's going to set Ford back entirely for this weekend. Now, taking a look at the race news heading into this weekend, after all the drama of what happened earlier, Mercedes are once again on top in practice. Now, it was a very big surprise to all of the paddock to see Mercedes-Benz fastest at the US Grand Prix, and they so nearly took that race victory had it not been for Tom overtaking Lewis Hamilton right at the very end. And it may have been Mercedes' one and only chance for a win, but that doesn't seem to be the case, as they are once again quickest in all sessions in practice here at Montreal. Jaguar's sessions suffered multiple setbacks as they both experienced multiple failures with their cars. Tom suffered a gearbox failure in FP1, Sam's oil pressure once again failed in FP2, and then in FP3, an engine electrical problem for Tom cut his session very short, which really doesn't bode well for Jaguar heading into this weekend. Now, there are concerns for Ford as they are showing no pace this race weekend and look set to be right at the very back. And this is not good news at all, considering what we've just found out earlier. This really isn't the best way to get the actual racing weekend started off. McLaren, though, are happy with their race pace. They feel like they can really challenge potentially even Mercedes-Benz at the front with the pace that they are showing on track. And what could potentially be a little bit of a cork in the bottle is that wet weather is set for qualifying, which may well mix up the grid entirely and cause a very fascinating race. But let's find out if it does so. It's time for the Canadian Grand Prix. Hey, what's going on, guys? It is Foxydude here. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the F1 Journey for you guys today here on the channel. Today we're here for round number 4 of the season at the Canadian Grand Prix. If you haven't enjoyed today's video, feel free to drop it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed already, as we continue to press on with the channel. But as you can see then, for the first time actually in the F1 Journey, we've got some wet weather in Season 6, that is, and it's happening here in qualifying. So we're going on our first blind lap here, and as we come across the start-finish line now, I decided to go out and do 2 laps. So this is my first lap of the 1:13.1, which puts us in second place at the moment, as we completely mess up turn 1 there. I did try and go back out again here and try and improve on my lap. We were a 10th down or so, but we absolutely nailed the final chicane there. As we come across the line, it's going to be a 1:12.7, which does put us onto provisional pole for the time being. But of course, as the qualifying came to a close, it actually turned out to dry up a little bit in the session, so we had to go out on a set of soft compound tyres and try and make it count here. But the lap overall is a little bit scruffy going through the chicane. That's not really going to help us out. That's a lot of time lost there as we come towards the start-finish line now, and that was not a good qualifying. Here we go then, it is round number 4 of the Formula 1 season here at the Canadian Grand Prix. A beautiful Formula 1 race circuit which is full of chicanes and high-speed corners, which will really prove those with the great power unit to really strive at this specific circuit. It's a dry day here today for race day compared to qualifying, where we saw mixed weather conditions, so the soft, medium and the hard compound tyres are what are going to have to be used here. But as you can see, it is a very short circuit, only 2.71 miles, but it is very, very fast, which does mean that overtaking is extremely common around here, and that means that plenty of drivers can certainly make up for their positions depending on where they've qualified. And as we said earlier, soft, medium and the hard compound tyres for this race weekend. Of course, the soft being the fastest, the mediums being the beauty of the middle, and then the hard compound tyres being the slowest of the bunch. Safety car, we still have not seen the safety car yet. Maybe we'll see it today. Looking at the starting grid then for this race, it is Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg locking out a Mercedes-Benz front row here for the Canadian Grand Prix. George Russell qualified in P3 ahead of Carlos Sainz in P4 for the fastest Ferrari. Daniel Ricciardo is in P5 ahead of Sergio Perez, who qualifies in P6. In 7th is Reese ahead of my teammate Sam. So overall, it's not been a good qualifying for Jaguar, because in P9 is Leclerc. Verstappen rounds out the top 10 for this weekend. And there we are. Our qualifying lap only got us P11 on the grid. A really, really bad qualifying with Ocon in P12. Mason Wood in 13th place ahead of Valtteri Bottas in P14 for Renault. The Porsche car, Pascal Wehrlein in P15 ahead of Lando Norris then, who starts the race in P16 ahead of his teammate Sebastian Vettel. But it's Hulkenberg in P17 with Vettel then in P18. Pretty much line of stern for those two cars. And it's a back row lockout for Ford, with Noah James out qualifying Pierre Gasly, P19 and P20 for them. Not a good qualifying session for Ford, a track that they knew that they would be struggling at. Heading into the race though, we now need to see what we're going to do, because we're starting in P11, which is really not where I wanted to be. And now I've got the choice here on what strategy I feel like doing. I was having a look at it and it said soft, medium, medium, and I decided to stick with that, and if I can stretch and get another set of soft compound tyres in there, we'll do so. But it's onto the grid now with 5 red lights here. Let's see what we can do, and it's like so we go here to start the Canadian Grand Prix. It's been a brilliant start there. We got instantly blocked there by the McLaren of Leclerc, as we couldn't quite get the power down and get around him. The track's so short that we just couldn't make it stick. But now around the outside of turn 2, we'll make full amends of that and go straight around the outside of both Leclerc, and also I believe that's Mason Wood there, who we can get around the outside of. Now we're attacking one of the Ferraris here, as Sam has just passed him there. I think Sam was under pressure from Reese, and I think Reese actually out-qualified Sam. So Sam making places then early on in this Grand Prix as we go through to the middle sector now, trying to get onto the back of Reese, but Reese gets a great exit now off of the corner, and as we try and chase down Sam here in towards this next part of the track, not really going to be any overtaken spots here. That's a little bit deep though into the corner. That's not actually going to put us onto the back of Reese. That's going to put Leclerc right onto the back of us now. So as we go in towards the hairpin here, Leclerc will have a look in towards the hairpin, but we're just going to be able to defend that one quite nicely there, and we're through now ahead of Charles Leclerc onto the back straight now. Let's see if we can try and make inroads on Reese. In fact, we've done a brilliant job of doing that. It's a fantastic exit here. He's going to be using some ERS, so we're going to pull out to the inside now of Reese, and as we go down the straight here, literally not even using any more ERS anymore, braking nice and late down the inside and towards the chicane, close the door off into that last corner, and that is going to allow Leclerc to have a little bit of a fight. But from P11 up to P8 then at the start of this race, that's not a bad start to things actually. It could have gone a lot worse, and the rest of the cars seem to be scrapping up ahead. Looking at the race start then, so obviously from the front row, you can see the Mercedes-Benz car's got a very nice launch. Hamilton getting a brilliant getaway, actually. You can see that there was our initial launch. It was really, really good, but the track is so narrow here at Montreal that it just wasn't really viable for us to do anything. We had to cut turn 1, though, to avoid collision, and then we went straight around the outside of both Wood and also Leclerc there, which was a beautiful move there in general. Sam then also got a very nice start. He then overtook Reese there, and that then put me onto the back of him, which we followed for the remainder of the first lap, and then made a move on him into the Grand Prix then as we start to breeze our way on through. This is what it looked like on board from Daniel Ricciardo, actually. So as he gets off the line here, he's now attacking Carlos Sainz going in towards the first corner here. So down the inside now, he goes trying to attack 4th place man Sainz. The top 3 get away completely fine. Hamilton's leading off into the distance. Rosberg is through, and then George Russell is making his presence felt. Ricciardo, though, did the exact same thing as what I did in turn 2. Just stormed it around the outside, got the exit, and that is job done. Now this is not on board with me, it's on board with my teammate Sam and how he managed to find his way past Reese. So he actually got a better start than Reese. And now this has already put him into a prime position down the inside of turn 2 here. You can see in front there is Ricardo making a move on sight. So you can see that outside line definitely favours pretty much everyone. But Sam this time around stuck it in there, broke later, and managed to just barge his way on through and took that position away from Reese. Back to the race action now, lap 2 of the Grand Prix here, and we're going to go and have a little look at Sam down the inside here. This was not really part of my plan. That really hasn't gone too well there, and that's now put us under pressure from the McLaren behind now. That was not what I wanted to do, in fairness. I literally just wanted to get as close as I could to Sam, and then, you know, try and get him on the back straight, but I broke a little bit later than Sam, and unexpectedly, he broke very early, and that put me right on the cusp of, well, hitting him, so I had to cut the corner to not hit him. But luckily, we didn't get any damage. Also, we didn't lose the position to Leclerc. We managed to fend him off quite nicely, but we really need to get on with it because Lewis Hamilton is absolutely flying out front. But George Russell wants to try and put an end to that. So he's now going to use his DRS and he breezes past Nico Rosberg and demotes the Mercedes driver down into P3 as Hamilton continues to sprint off into the distance. Can George Russell now sprint off after Lewis Hamilton and try and make a charge on him in this phase of the race? It'll be interesting to see what George can do now. And as for Nico Rosberg, his pace seems to have just dropped off quite considerably here because now Ricciardo fancies a run at Nico Rosberg, and as we breeze down the straight now, it is going to be easy pickings for Daniel Ricciardo. He breezes past Nico Rosberg. Even with Rosberg having DRS, he's still not able to pass him, but now on board with us here, lap 5 of the Grand Prix now. Still stuck behind Sam here, lounging in P8 now in this Grand Prix. Not really making enough progress in this race to do anything, but I realised this time around that Sam was going to make a very early break, so I decided to brake much later than Sam, and we go down the inside of my teammate, and that's us now up into P7. Up ahead is Sergio Perez in the Audi, so we're going to try and pass him. Then we've got Sainz, Rosberg, Ricciardo, Russell, and then Hamilton. That's the order in terms of the cars we need to get past, so we need to get on with it, breezing it through the chicane there, and open up the DRS now to attack Sergio Perez. Of course, he has got the DRS himself, though, but here is Sergio Perez, but that's not what I wanted to do there. Getting the back end all loose there, huge amount of oversteer in the car, and Sam retakes the position and would drop back down into P8 in this Grand Prix, and this was a common feature that I was having all race long, and that was that I had horrible balance in the car. And I couldn't really sort it out, but now as we go in towards the hairpin here, let's try my outside line tactic that we do pretty much all the time. Beautiful, works perfectly. I love these fast cars because you can just swoop around the outside. It's actually easier sometimes than making a move down the inside, and we get past Sam here. It's a straight drag race now, and then I just squirt a little bit of ERS there just to confirm the overtake, and then down the inside into the chicane, and that's going to be us back into P7 after our mistake. But of course, yeah, I was really struggling to get the balance right for the car. I was having so much oversteer, and it was just very hard to correct their engine's overheating at this stage in the race, so I need to try and calm that down. That's not really another way to doing it. Yeah, that's brake a little earlier and I'd probably be okay, but I was really struggling around this circuit, but eventually Sam does pass me, and then I repass him again. So me and Sam are constantly swapping positions, mainly because I can't keep my car properly planted on a race circuit, which doesn't help my cause. But one rule that I have actually set for the F1 journey, especially in Season 6 this year, is that I'm not allowed to do anything with the setup. It's just a default setup and it stays that way. So the only things that I can change on track is if I want to change the wing levels during a pit stop, like we're going to come into the pits right now. If we wanted to change the front brake bias and the differential, which of course we could do from the car anyway. That's the only things that I can change. The rest of it, I can't do anything with. I leave it as a default setup. Parc Fermé rules are on, so I can't change them. So it does mean that some tracks are actually going to be quite difficult, because normally I'd have to make some setup changes in order for me to feel comfortable. But in this circumstance, I can't make setup changes. So, at the moment, the balance of the car is not with me, and this is not going to be great. Now as we come out onto the track, this is not very good for us. A bit of traffic here, and just behind Nico Rosberg in all of this. Crucially though, we weren't really that close to Rosberg when we were in the, just before he pitted. So, we've technically net gained on Rosberg as I try again to be a bit greedy. Yeah, I really need to work on my braking points around the circuit. Yeah, that's another thing. Canada ain't got nice but I can't speak properly. It's got not nice braking zones for me. There we go, I got there in the end. But Reese is now also right on the back of us here, as Sainz now is going to go for it around the outside here of one of the Aston Martin cars here into the hairpin, and we brake a little bit later, and then we get a huge bit of oversteer on, literally drifting it through that corner, and that's really put us on the back foot now in this part of the lap. Again, that was probably a little bit too over-ambitious with the throttle, trying to swoop it around the outside of Nico Rosberg, but now we're going to get the DRS and swoop back past Reese again, and we should be alright. But as we go in towards into the chicane here, I've got to actually leave Reese a little bit of space because he was still on the outside there, and having the inside line for that has completely compromised me. And this is like a carbon copy of what happened in Bahrain, where we were just getting absolutely swamped. And at this point in the race, I really need to recompose myself now, because it's just going from bad to worse at this stage of the race, and we really need to calm ourselves down, get focused up, and go back after these drivers and go again. Looking on board though with Sam here, he's going to make a move past Nico Rosberg very shortly, which he does. He goes down the inside here and is making a much easier habit of overtaking drivers than I am. So credit to you, Sam, for being able to overtake cars, because at the moment it's not really been my forte. As we now go into lap 12 of the Grand Prix here towards the hairpin now. Loop, super late lunge down the inside there on Charles Leclerc, and somehow we actually made that move stick. Problem is, Leclerc is going to be right on the back of us now on this back straight here. We'll have the ERS and a DRS to help us with that aid, and Leclerc here, he's got the slipstream, but we are just a little bit quicker in a straight line, and now we need to press onwards here, and that's an overtake done. And the biggest problem that I was having this entire Grand Prix, and you're seeing it from all this footage, is that as soon as I made an overtake and I just built myself a little bit of momentum, a stupid, silly error would just come into play and would just cost me, set me back, give that frustration and bring it back in again. And it's very hard to tone down the frustration when it starts to build. So we really need to be careful. Now, as you can see here, focusing on Reese on this hairpin. This time not drifting it through the hairpin with Reese alongside me, but we get a very nice exit here with the all of our toys enabled to the absolute maximum. We're going to go for it on Reese now and hopefully try and nab some slipstream off of Nico Rosberg. This time around, though, Reese here is going to get alongside us again, but this time around, rather than being nice to Reese, I'm going to be horrible to him and completely close the door on the inside there and force him to lift off, as the corner was mine, and he had to back out of it. That now puts him under pressure here from Verstappen, who's going to go down the inside into turn 2. Reese will have the outside line. The outside tends to favour all the cars around here, but Verstappen clearly using a little bit of extra engine mode to hold himself in there. Now down the inside for the next complex of corners. Reese backs out of it. Verstappen gains a place, and we're now up into P8 once again. P8 seems to be my favourite number at the moment, because it's the only position that I'm ever really in. Next up is Nico Rosberg. This is the phase in the Grand Prix, like I said, where we are building momentum. There aren't any mistakes that are starting to crop up at the moment. We are now overtaking drivers. We're lapping at a very good pace here. Rosberg now dispatched, P7. Now we've got the next 3 cars to go through, and it's all about that calm and composure in this phase of the Grand Prix. We've now got Sam, I believe, we've got one of the Audi cars of Perez, and then also I believe Sainz involved in that. Speaking of them two having a little bit of a scrap, here they go, because here comes Sergio Perez now to fight past his Carlos Sainz, and now in towards the corner we go into the chicane. A little bit of a lock up there from Sergio Perez. He does just about hold on in there though, and he's fine with that and makes his way through, and Perez is done. Overtake done. Also though, Sam came out of nowhere there and just got past Sainz as well, so that's beautiful. Now we'll try and make Sainz lose 3 places in a matter of moments, as we're now going to go to the outside of turn 2 like we've done in before, but unfortunately on the braking zone there we just about fail to capitalise on that one, as unfortunately Sainz there makes the move stick and gets his elbows out against us now, as we try and go onto the back of Sainz here, moving our way on through, and there's again another back end slide there as the oversteer kicks in, but once again Rosberg now is onto the back of us here with the DRS now. He's going to fly on through, and again, that crucial problem of just not having the right balance here at this circuit, and that key error that just builds up some frustration comes back into play. Again, we lose a position due to just a silly error, really. But in towards the hairpin now, we're going to do what we do and just set ourselves up for it. So we go wide into the hairpin to give us a better exit. Now with the DRS going to be enabled, Rosberg should have it. He doesn't actually, so Nico, no DRS for him. We're not quite close enough to go for it now. And rather than being just impatient and aggressive, we're going to be calm and collective as we now ride on board here with Sergio Perez and Sam, who are fighting each other. And now in towards the hairpin, onto turn 1, sorry, we go. And Sam makes it stick. The only man, actually, crucially, who's on a second set of soft compound tyres. He is not running the medium, so he's doing soft medium, whereas my race strategy was soft, medium, medium, which is a little bit a bit strange. But now lap 17 of the Grand Prix, we're going to try again on Nico Rosberg, this time around, not drifting it through here. That's a much better run through the hairpin. Now we can open up the DRS here and use all of our toys to our advantage. And as you can see, the Mercedes-Benz car is just not as quick in a straight line. He is trying to catch up, but we are slowly but surely out-dragging him. And now as we brake nice and late down into the chicane, again, we're not giving any quarters. Very close to the wall of champions there, that we just about survived that. And we're through now up into P6 now in this Grand Prix. And next up the road is going to be Carlos Sainz. Then we've got Sergio Perez. And then we've also got Sam to try and counteract against. As you can see now, lap 22 of the Grand Prix. Much longer in this stint we're going now. Because I decided to switch strategies early on into the stint. And that is that I'm going to run with a set of soft compound tyres for the end of the race. And try and give me a little bit of an advantage to attack later on, as we're now closing up to Sainz here. Going to go for it down the inside, but it means nothing because Sainz actually comes in for a stop. He comes in for a second time, and that is his stint on the medium compound tyres done and dusted. And there is my pit window open, and it is obviously going to be for the soft compound tyres. However, I actually stayed out a little bit longer. I was really happy with pace. And what I wanted to do mostly was just to make sure that I had as much time out in free air, in P1 as possible, just to allow me to keep myself composed and just build up a little bit of extra concentration before I go back into the mix again. And what I definitely felt more than anything was that being stuck in the turbulent air of all the cars that we've been around, especially on this circuit, was really hurting this Jaguar car a lot. When I was in clean air, just, you know, doing those couple of laps on the medium compound tyres in P1, the car felt phenomenal. We were not as quick as the guys behind because they were on fresh tyres, and fresh tyres with these cars is suicide really for the guys on the old compound tyres, because you're going to get slaughtered in terms of your lead as Rosberg now gets back past us again. And annoyingly, we are now in the turbulent air once again of all the cars. And it's really what I was finding out is that if I was in clean air, I think I wouldn't have a problem, but because I was in turbulent air a lot of the times, and I had a couple of mistakes here and there, it really did cost us quite badly. But now, as you can see here, we're going to open up the DRS here and attack Nico Rosberg now in the Mercedes-Benz. And once again, try and make yet another overtake on this Mercedes driver. I feel like I've overtaken about 5 times today. But now we're going to open up the DRS here and go for a move now on Nico Rosberg. In towards turn 1 we go. Down the inside on Nico Rosberg. Lovely overtake there. And that's us through into P6. Next up, we've now got the trio of Sam, Perez, and also Sainz. Although Sam has actually pulled away from Sergio Perez, so that's not really helped me out too much there, as we've got a yellow flag on the minimap there for one of the drivers. That actually looks like one of the Audi cars that's out of the Grand Prix there. It is one of the Audi cars, so it can't be Sergio Perez, so it's got to be George Russell. So Russell then is out of the Canadian Grand Prix, and the championship leader will not score points today here, and there he goes, trundling on the circuit. Now Russell, the reason that George was so far back in the race was because, weirdly, he was doing a 3-stop race. He did 3 sets of soft tyres and then was on these mediums. But he's out of the Grand Prix now, so there's no more points. And a second yellow flag now is being called here for one of the Renault cars. And that is going to be complete chaos. We might see a safety car. There's enough time for it as we now breeze our way on through. I'd love a safety car at this rate, because it would really spice things up in this last phase of the Grand Prix. But I don't think we're going to get one, as we set the fast lap of the race so far. And full confirmation then, going back to the yellow flag, it is Valtteri Bottas that is out of the Grand Prix alongside George Russell, both retiring at the exact same time. Pulls over to the left-hand side of the circuit. Very dangerous place to put the car, but for some reason, we're not going to get a safety car from it, of course. Now onto our fight though, you can see here that we've closed up to Sergio Perez, and we're going to go for an attack now on the Mexican as we breeze our way through in towards the last chicane, braking very late in towards the chicane, but missing it completely. Couldn't really get back onto the bollard because I could screw it up so badly, but it doesn't make a difference because we dropped back past Sergio Perez, and yet again, more impatience and mistakes come into their own, as I was desperate to try and close up to the likes of Reese and Sam in this phase of the Grand Prix. But now, as you can see here, opening up the DRS, we get the chicane right this time, and it looks like turn 1 might just be our new best friend as we now go for it. Down the inside? No, not quite. We're going to have to wait a little bit longer as the impatience starts to build up now. That's a great run though through turn 2, keeping it nice and wide, opening up the ERS just a little bit now, unsettling Sergio through here, but annoyingly, again, I couldn't get the braking point right, and Sergio pulls away off into the distance now. So again, building up that frustration. We just need to keep ourselves in a nice, happy place, and we should be absolutely fine. But Perez now is literally pulling away here, but we've got the DRS, but crucially, we've only got 3 laps to go in this Grand Prix, so we really need to get this move done now. Oh, that was very close to the back end, just sliding out and going into the wall. That was a bit nervy. So let's try and make this move stick then. So in towards the hairpin we go now. Perez here is going to go deep to the inside. We're going to take our wide line as per usual and try and get that exit. It wasn't a brilliant exit, but we're just going to use absolutely everything now and just try and pass him. He doesn't have the DRS this time though, so it should be a little bit simpler for us, and it is going to be much simpler for us. And that is Sergio Perez done and dusted, out of the way, and we're now in towards 5th place now in this Canadian Grand Prix. Perez will hold on to us because of course he's got the slipstream, but we do have the DRS to keep us in front now, and you can see there is Sam just up the road, 2.2 seconds back, and now onto lap 35 of the Grand Prix here. Last lap now of this race. It is Sam in P3, and then it is Sainz in P4. We are in P5, trying to see if we can get any more places in this Canadian Grand Prix. We'll try and set ourselves up for an attack here in towards the hairpin. We're just not close enough to really get it. Let's see if we can try and get a good exit though off of here. A bit of wheel spin to really compromise it, and that's not really going to help us out though, as we now go onto the straight here with the DRS enabled now. Sainz looking a little bit too far into the distance for us, which is a bit of a pain now in towards the last chicane here. Not quite going to work for us, unfortunately. We couldn't really fully send it. Reese is going to come across the line. I keep saying Reese. Sainz comes across the line in P4. We're going to come across the line in P5 in what was really a very, very scrappy race indeed. But Lewis Hamilton takes his first win of the season, and it's the first win of the season for Mercedes-Benz as Lewis Hamilton takes that race victory. Daniel Ricciardo finishes in P2. A very lonely race actually for Ricciardo. As soon as he did dispatch of Nico Rosberg, I was watching some of his cameras, and he was just in his own world. Of course, with Russell making a million pit stops, Ricciardo just settled in P2. Sam finishes in P3 after starting in P8, so credit to him, he gained 5 places today, and that's him in the podium spot. Sainz finishes in P4 for Ferrari, just in front of us in P5. Overall, it was a really, really messy Grand Prix for us. We were constantly making mistakes. We just really weren't happy with the car, yeah, it's P5. But at the end of the day, we still make up a good amount of places. We gained 6 places, I believe, in the race. Something like that. We started in P11, we finished in P5. Not too bad. Perez in P6 for Audi, ahead of Nico Rosberg in P7. He'll be kicking himself that he got on the front row with Lewis Hamilton and only finished in P7. Reese, a bad race for him in the Ferrari in P8. And then it's both the Red Bull cars of Verstappen in P9, Mason Wood in P10. The fastest lap went to ourselves with a 1 minute 5.400, which makes me happy. Then into P11, Charles Leclerc for McLaren in P11 only, which was a bit of a concerning considering Ricciardo claimed himself podium. Pascal Wehrlein finishes in P12 ahead of Esteban Ocon in P13. It's then Hulkenberg in the other Porsche car in P14, and then it's both the Aston Martins of Lando Norris and Sebastian Vettel 15th and 16th, and then it's both the Ford cars of Pierre Gasly and Noah James in 17th and 18th, and then of course we saw Valtteri Bottas and George Russell both DNF from this race, which they will not be happy with. Having a look then at the Drivers' Championship now into this Canadian Grand Prix, and there has been a change at the top of the championship, and we now lead the Drivers' Championship, I think for the first time. I can't remember if I led it earlier and then Russell took it back off me. I think it was Sam that led the championship, but nonetheless, we lead the Drivers' Championship on 55 points. Sam is in second place on 52 points. Also in second place with 52 is Daniel Ricciardo. However, he is actually third in the championship because Sam has taken a race victory, whereas Ricciardo has only taken a P2. So Sam takes that spot as he has had a race win. George Russell, who DNF'd from today's Grand Prix, is only 10 points back though of 45 points, with Lewis Hamilton climbing all the way up to 5th in the championship now of 44 points, with Reese in P6 on 42 points. That gap between Reese in P6 and myself in P1 is only 13 points. There is nothing in it between the top 6 drivers. Sainz in P7, you can say he's arguably in it as well, with 37 points. Nico Rosberg is in P8 for Mercedes-Benz with 25 points, same as Charles Leclerc, and then Sergio Perez rounds off the top 10 with 22 points to his name. Into the Constructors' Championship we go now, and it is Jaguar leading the way still with 107 points, with Ferrari in second now on 79 points, but McLaren are now just 2 points behind them after a very strong result for Daniel Ricciardo here today. They're on 77 points. Mercedes-Benz, with that race victory, now shoots them in front of Audi, so they're making a massive comeback in this Constructors' battle with 69 points to their name. Audi dropped to P5 now with 67 points, and Red Bull are on 9 points. But with that being said and done, let's go and have a look at the post-race notebook and see what the teams and drivers had to say after this Canadian Grand Prix. So here we are then with the post-race notebook, and let's see what the teams and drivers have had to say after this race weekend. And unfortunately, it's been a lot of, well, people being unhappy. But firstly, obviously, Lewis Hamilton dominated the Canadian Grand Prix weekend with pole position and pretty much leading for the entirety of the Grand Prix, pretty much unchallenged as well. And that win does now make it 4 different winners in the first 4 races of this season. But let's kick things off then. So firstly, obviously, Tom was very, very unhappy with his car this race weekend. He felt like the balance was all over the shape with horrible amounts of oversteer, and also that the brakes on the car need serious working as he can't brake as late as he would like. George Russell was left very, very angry after his race weekend. George Russell was running in a strong P2, but Audi initially did a very strange 3-stop strategy with George Russell, but could potentially be down to tyre wear, but George didn't feel any of that. And then obviously his DNF meant that he did not score any single points at all. And Nico Rosberg complained of a PU issue, which he believes was the cause of his demise down the order after starting from 2nd place and finishing in P7. But that's going to be it then for this Canadian Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. And next episode, I do believe, is the Singapore Grand Prix. So we will see you then. Take care all.